Hello everyone, in this video we will see summary of chapter 5 footprints without feet, and in this video I will explain summary of the chapter in English. If you want to see the video in which I will explain in Hindi, you will have to wait for some time. In some time I will upload the video of explanation in Hindi also with the line to line. I will read in that video, I will read line to line and explain meaning of every line in Hindi also. In this one I will explain everything in English. So first of all, let us see chapter sketch. So the story is about scientist who discovers how to make himself invisible. So scientist makes a discovery how to make himself a invisible person, as he was afraid of being discovered in London, where he had committed some crimes. He runs away to a remote village. However, he runs out of money and resorts to robbery using his advantage of invisibility. So this story is about a scientist who invented who discovered how to be a invisible person, and with the help of it he done a robbery. And now we will see about the character sketch. So Griffin, he is the eccentric scientist who make himself invisible. He does not hesitate to resort to criminal activities to remain a mystery. So Griffin was a scientist about whom we will study in the chapter. Mrs. Hall, she is a resolute but superstitious owner of the inn at Lipping where Griffin stays. So inn means you can understand inn by a hotel where people stay by paying some rent or something. Mr. Jeffers, he is a dutiful policeman who fails to arrest the invisible scientist. So Mr. Jeffers is a policeman. Now we will see the summary of chapter. So, in the starting, we'll see two boys on a street in London were surprised to see fresh muddy footprints of bare feet on the steps of a house without finding who was making them. Further on, the footprints disappeared. Those footprints had been made by Griffin, an eccentric scientist who had discovered how to make his body transparent. He could only see with the clothes he is wearing. So chapter starts with the two boys on the street of London. The boys were seeing footsteps on the muddy floor, but they cannot see any person who is making those footsteps. So this was a scientist who made a discovery with the help of which he can be invisible. No one can see him. Anyone can see only his clothes if he was wearing them. In the next part we will see that Griffin was a scientist. Griffin was having criminal bent of mind. So he was scientist and also a criminal bent of mind, and was a lawless person. Lawless person means who do not like to obey any laws. He set fire to his landlord's house to take revenge against him for trying to evict him. So Griffin was a scientist who is a lawless person. He do not believe any laws, and he set his landlord's house on fire because his landlord tried to throw him out of the house. To get away, he had to remove his clothes so that he become invisible. He was a homeless wanderer in London without clothes or money during winter. So when he was thrown out of the house, so he was become a wanderer. Is a person who wanders or who moves around anywhere without any purpose, and the scientist has no money at all with him also. So Griffin managed to escape from two inn boys' observation and entered unseen into a big store to get warm. After store was closed at night, Griffin put on some new clothes, consumed meat and coffee from the restaurant in the store, and went to sleep on a pile of quilts. He overslept and only woke up when the shop had opened and the assistant had arrived. On being seen and chased by them, he again took off his clothes so that they could not see him. So as he was a wanderer, he has no place else to go. So on the closing time of a mall sort of thing where he can find clothes and food to eat, he entered there and he stayed at night. He wore some clothes and ate things that were present there, but he overslept. So when the owner of that mall sort of thing, when owner of that came, he saw a person, or he saw a thing that is wearing clothes, but he cannot that person he cannot saw who was in the cloth. So he chased that person down. So Griffin has to throw off all his clothes to avoid from being seen. Next, so the Griffin entered a theatrical company which gave items used in plays. There he wore badges to outline his face, dark glasses, a false nose, and bushy side whiskers. He robbed the shopkeeper of his money and escaped to a village away from London to avoid being caught. So again he committed a crime. He stole from a sea. See, here you can see only clothes and people are chasing these clothes, and this is Griffin. So after this he went to a company, a theatrical company, where he outlined his face by putting a false nose and false whiskers. Whiskers are the things like of whiskers like we see on the nose of cat. These are called whiskers. So he robbed a shopkeeper. Griffin again robbed a shopkeeper and went to a village far away from London. Now Griffin arrives at Lipping village. Griffin booked 2 rooms at an inn belonging to Mr. Hall in the village Lipping. He explained to her that he had an accident and did not want to be disturbed. As Mrs. Hall tried to be social with him, soon his money was finished, and so he robbed a clergyman's house by using his invisibility. So he was staying in an inn at Mrs. Hall. Soon he went out of money and he again robbed a clergyman house using his invisibility. And then that same day, when Mrs. Hall found Griffin's room open with his badges and clothes lying around, she and her husband entered the room. Suddenly, both of them were attacked by the furniture being flung at them, but they could not see who was doing this. Mrs. Hall felt that furniture was haunted by spirits, and she could not see Griffin. So one day, Griffin's room was open, and Mrs. Hall and her husband enters Griffin's room. And when they entered, they were attacked by their furniture. As they could not see Griffin, so they thought that the room was haunted. Now Griffin becomes invisible and escapes from Lipping. Now Griffin has to escape from Griffin also. When the clergyman reported the burglary, you can say theft to the police, most people in the village felt that the strange scientist had a hand in it because he paid his due rent, whereas earlier he was not able to do so. So Mr. Jeffers, village police constable, was called to arrest Griffin on suspicion. Meanwhile, Mrs. Hall asked Griffin to explain all the unusual happenings. Griffin lost his temper and decided to tell everything. He started removing his clothes, and even Jeffers could not catch someone who he could not see. He was knocked unconscious by the invisible man who escaped. So, as that clergyman reported the theft to the police, most of the people in the village that felt that the strange scientist which came to the inn of Mrs. Hall has done the robbery. So Jeffers the policeman was also thinking of arresting him. Then then the Griffin, the invisible scientist, was very confused and he was angry and don't know what to do. So he tell everything about all the things to Mrs. Hall. Then when Jeffers came to arrest him, he started He means here Griffin the scientist started removing all his clothes, and Griffin was not able to arrest or catch an invisible man, and this is how the Griffin the scientist again escaped from the place. So this is the whole story. I've explained you in English, and in the coming video I will explain the whole story in Hindi also. So thank you so much.